Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History Avec a Hemingway, or as we've renamed it, Notre Dame Avec a Hemingway? Is that what we're calling it? Something like that. This is part 2, guys, so tune in and let Claudine take it from here.
And we're still talking about the North chapels. We still have the South chapels and then the whole back chapels of the app. So this is like, we could be talking about chapels for, ages here. But we're going to tell you a little bit more about the chapels on the north side. But we'll talk a little bit first about the outside. So Notre Dame itself, which I don't think we've even ever gone into like the actual history of Notre Dame, but the cathedral began in 1160. Bishop Maurice de Sully is the one who he wanted to build basically the most prominent, biggest church that anybody had ever seen. The Ile de la Cité, which is at one time was known as Lutèce, there was chapels that filled that part where Notre Dame is now, going back to the 4th century. And if you go there, like the other day, I went there and you lined up before you got in. If you look, you'll see names on the different stones on the ground, and that is marking where a chapel used to be. And when we talk about those kind of chapels, we're talking about like a whole building, like a small little church, a little bit different than the chapels we'll talk about today. But it's around Easter. They don't really know exactly when. They give a 1-month window of 1163 that Pope Alexander III was in France. He came to Paris and he laid the first stone 1163, but really the construction began 2 years before that. So I don't think they wanted to wait for the Pope. Some of the stones used to build the foundation of Notre Dame were the former Romanesque church that was there. So some of the stones in the foundation of Notre Dame go all the way back to the 4th century, but the walls itself. So when you go into the chapels, you could go in there and like touch the wall. Those walls itself go back to 1225 to 1270, but the inside walls were built first. So if you go and you're standing there, kind of like where the little gate for each chapel is, and the columns and the walls, if you touch the walls on your left and right, those are back to 1180 to 1200. And then the outer walls, because they built the back of the church first and came forward, and then they built because they had to build from the inside out because you need all those huge columns. But the walls of the nave were built between 1235 and 1250, not 1250. Originally, there were 29 chapels in the church. We have less than that now. But the chapels weren't originally even planned because they figured everything about a Gothic church is about light. So letting in the light, the appearance of lightness. And they thought if they had chapels, because they'd be underneath, they would be too dark. So they didn't want to have them. But the major guilds of France, including the Goldsmith Guild, which we've talked about because they're the ones that did paid for the paintings, they insisted and even paid for them. And then wealthy families jumped on board and also did it because they have the opportunity of having their very own little chapel and access to a deacon. And if you go to a church like Saint Eustache, and if you look on the north side, there is a couple chapels where it has a wall. Those were private chapels. So a family could have their own chapel and they'd come to church and they'd sit inside their own chapel and they could have access to the priest coming to visit them. They could bury their loved ones and everything in these chapels. But that's not really how it goes anymore.
Not the same.
No, where there's not, otherwise, could you imagine? It'd be like, here's the Louis Vuitton chapel.
He would do it if they would allow it.
Oh yeah, they would have, it'd be the Carrefour chapel. Wouldn't it be great?
They'd tape a
Uh,
banana to the wall.
yeah, the entrance and layout of the cathedral has changed since it's reopened for us here this month. When you go in, before you would go into the door, the right door, the door, the in the right on the right side. Well, as you're looking at it, that was the door of Saint Anne. You now enter through the main door, which is the bigger one, the Last Judgment, and then you go to the north. So they're sending you through to the north side. The other day when I was in there was people going either direction. When it first opened, they made sure you kept going, following the path, but now people are just going all over the place. But you do want to kind of go through the north. And so the north nave chapels are the path of promise. They evoke the foreshadowing of Christ's coming, and they lead you through the Old Testament to contemplate of the incarnation.
I like the
And
journey. What a fun
yeah,
journey.
I got all of that from the Notre Dame book. So I went to private school till like seventh grade. So what I've retained from then is basically Noah's Ark and a few other things, or what I've learned from art about the Bible.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. So each of the seven chapels on the northern side have stained glass windows, of course. They are called griselle windows because it's a lot of grayish. These were done by Edward Didon. But they came from the drawings of Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, which you're going to hear that come up a lot, and his name specifically. But Didron was born in 1836, and he took over the stained glass atelier of his uncle, Adolphe, in 1849. He was chosen by Viollet-le-Duc to create these stained glass windows. Each one of the windows is different, but they are mostly, like I was saying, they mostly kind of have a painting of kind of different shades of gray, but it lets in the maximum amount of light. But they are really very beautiful. He also designed windows in Saint-Germain-des-Prés and also Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, including one of my favorite ones in Saint-Étienne-du-Mont about the reliquary of Saint-Geneviève. The first chapel is dedicated to Noah. It also holds the baptismal font that was created in the 19th century from drawings of, you guessed it, Viollet-le-Duc. The font was created by the artist Louis Bachelet, who did it from the drawings of Viollet-le-Duc. Jean-Baptiste is on the top, and around the base of it are the 12 apostles, little heads of the 12 apostles. And on the four different legs is each one is one of the evangelists holding their attributes. So you can see on the front side that this chapel is locked, so you can't go in. So we could only see the front, but you see Matthew with his angel on the right and Jean with the eagle on the left. Jean is always the easiest one to spot because he's the only one of the apostles and evangelists that did not have a beard.
Wait, why?
Easy to see. But Luke with the bull and Mark with the lion are on the back. Sadly, you can't see back there. And I probably spent an hour on the internet trying to find a picture of the back of it, and I cannot find one. So, of course, one of these days I'm going to just have to hop the fence. But there's a new font, which we'll talk about another time. Right when you come in the door, there's a huge font that they'll use for baptisms. It's not the holy water font, it's for baptism specifically. Right when you come in the door, you see it. It matches the other liturgical furniture. But I really like the old one, of course. And then hanging on the wall of this, on the western wall, is a painting by Louis and Matthew Lenain. It was painted in 1640, and it is the restored painting of the birth of the Virgin. Sadly, most of the extra details of the chapels did not return. There's candlesticks and crucifix. There used to even be beautiful linen that would lay across the altars that you see in the chapels. Not in the first one, but in the next six ones that were, again, all designed by Viollet-le-Duc out of stone. They're each different, really beautiful. But this one also has an armoire, a beautiful wooden armoire that's carved, and that was designed by, you Can you guess?
No.
Belay the Duke. But the ironwork gates, everything. He did like everything. We'll talk sometime about Belay the Duke as well. He did so many things, self-taught, just fantastic. Hanging, of course, in this chapel is what we talked about last week, the tapestries. This is where you'll find the Matisse tapestries. The second chapel to Abraham, through faith, is the first witness of the blessing promised to all. It was once the chapel of St. Charles and St. George and St. Blair over different times, all of them. Poor, I was like, I feel bad for those other saints. Like they just were erased, thrown away. Just rude.
We can make a podcast about them. Bring it
I
back.
know. We got you, Charles. We're keeping you alive.
That's your back.
And this is the first of the 14 lames that are in the church. There was 13 before the fire. And here's a thing where they've actually brought an extra one. The lames is I've been obsessed with these for a long time. I'll put the link in the show notes and on my website to listen to that episode. And also you can watch the video I did all about them. This one is called The Conversion of St. Paul by Laurent de la Hare. It's the Lamé of 1637. The Lamés every year for 74 years. The Goldsmith Guild of Paris gave one painting to Notre Dame, and it hung on the chapel on May 1st. So that's why they are called the Lamé paintings. This one is Paul on his way to Damascus to persecute the first Christians when he heard Christ that struck him down and he converted to Christianity. Also in this chapel is a sculpture of Saint Francois Xavier baptizing a Jesuit missionary. This was done by Victor Geoffroy Duchamp, who he's another name will come up a lot. A lot of these details are 19th century under Viollet-le-Duc. Geoffroy Duchamp studied under James Pradier. He also did the 12 apostles and evangelists that lined the roofs that we talked about years ago. We're still waiting for those to come back, hopefully in the next few months onto the roof. He also did the rooster that fell from the spire, and he did a handful of mausoleums and tombs in the chapels as well. Here's the tapestry by Pierre Baraglio of the tree and also Orex. Chapel number 3 is Moses, and through the waters of death, which is an uplifting thought, leads God's people from slavery to freedom. And I just, I remember my ex-husband loved that movie, The 10 Commandments, and I can never watch it again because he loved that movie so much. So Moses, and I remember going to Universal Studios as a kid, and you literally drive through the little tram as the sea parts.
That title, though, wow.
Yeah. Here's another Lamé painting. It's St. Paul blinds the false prophet. This is kind of a scary chapel. Jesus converts Sergius. This was by Nicolas Loire. It was done in 1650. And on this painting, in the bottom corner, what they found during cleaning was the number 22 because it's the 22nd painting in the series. The tapestry here is the composition 1982 by the Franco-Chinese artist Zhao Huaqi. Chapel number 4 is Isaiah. He sees this servant who's suffering and saved humanity. The Lamé here is the flagellation of St. Paul and St. Silas by Louis Testelin from 1655. You're going to notice that we mention St. Paul or St. Peter in a lot of these because a lot of the paintings have to do with those two. Testelin was a student of Simon Vouet, who was a friend of Charles Lebrun. This was his second Lamé he painted, but also his very last painting he ever did. And here it is in Notre Dame.
Good reason to go visit it.
I know. In this chapel is also a statue of Saint Landry, who used to have his own chapel, but nope, now he just has a statue. He was a bishop of Paris. He was the founder of the very first Hôtel du Hospital. He died in the year 661. We don't know when he was born. But when Paris was suffering from famine in between 650 and 651, He famously sold off all of his possessions and the church's furniture to feed the poor. And he later opened up a hospital dedicated to Saint Christopher, one of my favorites, the patron saint of travelers, later being known as the Hotel Dieu, which is right across the street and will someday be part of a museum for Notre Dame. Here's where you can find the tapestry shroud number 2 by Mario Prasino, which I really loved. And chapel 5 is David, and it's the David's prayer sings of the hope of life stronger than death. He is also on the very front. He in the next chapel, Solomon, he's on the front of the church in the Gallery of Kings that we talked about recently, straight up over the door of the Last Judgment. The LeMay painting here is the sons of Sceva beaten by the demon by Matthew Ilia, 1702. The thing about all of these things, which, some of these themes are a little like, oh, wow, beaten, killed, everything, is because people didn't know how to read. So they told the stories from the Bible in the stained glass, in the sculptures, in the painting, and everything. So it is, I think that, but when you look at them, it might not sound so scary if you didn't know the name of the song, of the painting.
Yeah, they sound pretty terrifying when you put it that
Yeah.
way.
This one is from the Acts of the Apostles. It was a son of Sceva imitating Paul. A possessed man comes and throws himself on him, and Paul is above, kind of preaching to everybody. This is where the tapestry by Dom Robert is of called L'Aude, which is the one I really, really love that I can't wait for you to see. Chapel 6 is Solomon, who guides all human wisdom back to the eternal wisdom of God. Again, he's also on the front as one of the kings of Judah in the Gallery of Kings. The LeMay painting here is a prediction of the prophet Agabus to St. Paul by Louis Charon in 1687. It's a very little known episode of the Acts of the Apostles when the prophet names Agabus in the center, the Holy Spirit is above. This is the only painting in Notre Dame that has the Holy Spirit as which is the dove flying above. There's a statue of St. Charles Borromeo, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Milan from 1654 to 1584. He was also the nephew of the Pope. And the tapestry here is the one of Brock. The last chapel, which we didn't really talk about last time because it didn't have a tapestry, but chapel 7 is dedicated to Elijah, who has announced the Messiah's imminent arrival with a view towards reconciliation. But it's also the confessional now. So you can't really see. Of course, I was peering in the beautiful stained glass doors of it. Nobody was doing their confession. Nobody was in there. I wouldn't do it if people were in there. And there's a sculpture in there of Saint Anne, who is the mother of Mary, with the Holy Virgin, done by Geoffrey Duchamp. And that is really a beautiful one. But the carved wood on the top of it and the stained glass window is really, really beautiful. And there's an altar in there. Also, the Viollet-le-Duc did, but you can't see things very well in that statue or in that chapel. But each one of them is really beautiful. I do think that some of the extra charm and details of Notre Dame were removed. And after going the other day to Notre Dame and then going to Saint-Sulpice, it was there's something a little sterile feeling in Notre Dame, probably because it's so clean and white. But I do hope they bring some of the special details in each of the chapels eventually back. And we could see that because then it looks like they're a little bit more special now. They just kind of look like they're very sterile little rooms.
Yeah, I was just looking at the pictures and videos. I haven't been yet. It just kind of reminds me of like a shopping mall now or something. Everything's so white and bright and yeah, like very sterile.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I hate even saying that about it because I love it so much and I'm so glad we could be back in there. But I just really hope that they and in one of the chapels, like the statue that I mentioned of Saint Xavier, that was not there last week, but it was there on Saturday morning. So that came back, but that was also listed on the plaque. So I don't think other details because the plaques are done and they're like metal and they're hanging there. So I kind of don't imagine that some of those little things are going to come back. And some of those things I did find in the treasury that also opened this last week to the public again. But I just really hope that they kind of return some of those little things. I mean, even just putting the beautiful white linen on the altar kind of just warmed it up a little.
Well, we have time to find out what's next, and make sure you guys tune in, follow along. We'll be talking about Notre Dame a lot, and make sure you hire Claudine Hemingway on your next tour. She can take you all around Paris, and tune in next week, guys. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, claudinehemingway.com.